When I was about 6 years old in kindergarten or first grade, I can't remember, we lived across the street from my school. I mean right across the street. From our front room window, the school property was the majority of what could be seen. I went to this school until my second grade year, when the school was shut down by the district. Most kids were shipped off to whatever school happened to be closest to them, and the abandoned property became a community center of sorts for the town of less than 200 or so people. I won't drop the name of the town, but I will say that it is somewhere in rural Illinois, that the estimated 200-person figure was in 1989, and that there are considerably fewer people now as more of the population has either moved away or died and several of the houses have burned down. Today, the town is even more dried up than it was during my kindergarten years, and the last time I visited, it looked as though nature was beginning the process of reclaiming it. I say all of this because it's important that you understand how small this town is. People don't just randomly show up there. Strangers would be immediately recognized. There was nowhere for them to hide, because the town really only had 3 streets. All but the one end of them led out of town, and the lone end of the lone street that didn't offer an escape route led to a dead end with an ancient old cemetery. Another escape route, in a manner of speaking. This town had nothing but a post office, a couple of abandoned buildings that I'm fairly certain used to be general stores back in the distant past, and a payphone. Today, the post office is shut down and the payphone is gone. So keep all of this in mind when I say that a stranger or a creep would have been noticed immediately. It's surprising, then, that I was almost abducted by a stranger in that town. From directly in front of that school, actually. I think I really was abducted. That's the weird thing. When I left the school that day, the man was standing in front of his vehicle and he greeted me by name. That's what makes this even stranger. He knew my name. He told me that my mom had sent him to pick me up for some reason or another, though the memory of what he actually said is a bit hazy. It amounts to this. Your mom isn't at home, she sent me to pick you up and take you where she is. Get in and we'll go for a ride. You know, the usual creeper thing. And I did. There are certain details I don't remember from this point. Why didn't I just look across the street to see if my mom's car was sitting on our driveway? Maybe I did. Where did we go? I don't know. What happened? I don't remember. I have the briefest of memories of me sitting in the passenger seat of his vehicle, saying something as we drove out of town. Can't remember what he said. Can't remember what he looked like, and can't remember what my next memory is of us back in my driveway in the house across from the school. There's just a large chunk of my memory gone. I don't know if there's something that I've blocked out for the last 33 years. Maybe he took me somewhere and did something to me that creeps due to young and trusting little boys and I just locked it up inside. I hope not. I hope he was some aspiring kidnapper with a conscience who just couldn't accept the enormity of the heinous sin he was about to commit and took me back home. That nothing bad happened to me. That my lack of memory is due more to the entire sequence of events being so uneventful that my developing little brain felt no need to keep it in storage. I've often wondered if there's some way, like through some form of therapeutic hypnosis they show in movies and on TV to unlock those memories, or if that's even a real thing. Or if it is, if I even want to venture down that rabbit hole and discover what really happened. Maybe some things should just remain buried. I'm sure you've heard the expression, don't ask questions you don't want the answers to. Yeah, I feel that applies here. And maybe somebody will tell me it's just a vivid dream that a young child had and remembered incorrectly as an actual memory. But this is not the case. A few years back, I actually asked my mom about it. Do you remember when that strange man took me from the school and brought me back? Oh yes, I do. Apparently I told her what happened because she told me about how she went over to the school and raised a bunch of hell over it. And that's all I have to prove, even to myself, that it ever happened. Up until then, I had wondered if I had imagined the whole thing too. This is unfortunately no longer something I can even attempt to convince myself is true. Who was this man? Why did he take me and why did he bring me back? What happened that day? I'm a big fan of horror. I love a novel or a movie about monsters. I'm an avid fan of Stephen King and creepypasta. But it isn't Pennywise the Dancing Clown or Slender Man that keeps me up at night sometimes. No, it's the real monster who almost gobbled me up when I was 6 years old and then lost his appetite. Thanks for listening. I've been thinking about this story a lot. I had a nightmare about it recently, and after telling it to my boyfriend for the first time, he said that maybe writing about it will help. I often do try to cope with things, so I figured I might as well get the little karma out of my story. So this takes place 10 years ago. I was 14 at the time. I grew up in an old farmhouse far out on a rural road. Cornfields surrounded our home, and our closest neighbors were 2 to 3 miles away. The closest town was a 15-minute drive. One thing that was really nice about living out there was that you don't get a lot of strangers knocking at your door to either sell or talk religion with you, but we did get a few. One night it was just my mother and I home making baked goods for a fundraiser for my little brother's Boy Scout troop. Dad and brother were out helping my uncle with some cows if I remember right. We were bustling around the kitchen, talking and laughing. Mom and I have always been close. Soon we heard a knock at the door, just a normal average knock. Mom hummed herself and took off her dish gloves to open the door. I stood at the kitchen island rolling out some tough dough for a couple of pies, but also watching my mom go to the door. I had a slight twinge of anxiety in my stomach but chalked it up as being one of my normal flurries. As my mom walked towards the door, the person on the other side gave another tap. This time a rhythm. My mom stopped. She turned and started walking back into the kitchen with a look on her face. She went to our kitchen window that faced out towards our porch. She went to the side where you'd be able to see the porch clearly. Mom pulled the curtain back just enough to peek and not be noticed from the outside. The look on her face deepened. She went to the other side of the window then, to look out at the driveway. I had stopped what I was doing altogether at this point, deciding that the pie crusts probably weren't important in this moment as the feeling in my stomach was in a fully blown fury. Mom's eyes widened as she looked out. She closed the curtain and looked at the floor. The look on her face was angry but also scared. She walked over and grabbed my wrist. She walked us to the closet and as she did, she quietly asked me if I had my phone. I did, thankfully. She pulled out my dad's prized Louisville Slugger from the closet. The person at the door started banging the door hard. I gasped a bit. Mom looked at me and shushed me. She then took my arm again and walked me towards my parents' bedroom, locking doors and windows as we went. At one point, she stopped at a window in our living room and peeked out of it. She closed it quickly and let out a frustrated noise. Got to the bedroom and she pulled me in and locked the door. She took my phone and began dialing as she gave me the bat, sat me down on the floor, on the side where I'd be hidden from the door, and opened the closet to get the gun case. She talked quietly into the phone. I was terrified and couldn't focus on what she was saying. She pulled out my dad's shotgun and loaded it quickly. I looked at her, scared, as she hung up. She pulled me up again and walked me out of the bedroom. We creeped back over to the other side of the house where the bathroom was. Mom gave my phone back to me and ushered me inside. She set the gun down and looked at me with both hands on my shoulders. Sis, you need to listen to me. There are some men outside and they're walking around the sides of the house. I looked at her with wide eyes. I could feel myself shaking. Why? What do they want? I don't know, but you need to stay in here and lock the door and don't come out until I tell you to. You get it? I nodded, and she squeezed my shoulder. I'm going to barricade the door from the other side. I will not move the barricade until I know that you know that it's me. I knew what she was saying immediately. Crawl out the bathroom window and run if it's moved otherwise. My mom shut the door and I quickly locked it. I heard her move the quilt chest in front of the door. A very heavy box with lots of quilts from over the years. I sat on the floor in front of the window clutching the baseball bat. I sat there for what seemed like hours but was maybe 5 minutes. While I sat there, I heard footsteps outside the window. 2 deep voices are quietly talking. You sure they're in there? Maybe nobody's home. No, there are at least 2 women here. I heard them talking at the door. Saw a guy and a kid leave when we passed the house earlier. I shivered and started to hyperventilate, but quickly covered my face with a towel to mute it. Who were they, and what did they want, and why were they here? Soon I heard another voice. Guys, let's go. Charlie spotted cops down the road. Then I heard 3 sets of feet running off towards the front of the house. I was crying at this point, with tears running down my face. Was it over? Were they leaving? A few more minutes go by and I hear a man's voice in the house. I started to panic and huddled into the corner of the bathroom. I heard my mom's voice on the other side of the bathroom door. Sis, it's me. The sheriff's here. They're gone. I'm moving the trunk. I got up and unlocked the door and opened it to find the sheriff and my mom moving the trunk out of the way. I quickly ran to my mom and we just stood there holding each other. The sheriff said he had a few more officers chasing down the van, that I needed to ask my mom and me some questions. We all talked in the kitchen, where the smell of burnt cookies was in the air. The sheriff asked us questions, and that's when I found out what my mom saw. When she looked out and saw the man who was knocking at our door, she knew something was off immediately. He was casually dressed, gym shorts and a wife beater, not something a salesman or people of a church would wear when coming around. So then my mom thought that maybe his car broke down or something and was looking for help. So she looked out at the drive and saw something that made her stomach drop. There was a van in our drive parked in a way that wouldn't allow my mother's car to leave. with a man in the passenger seat and another leaning in towards the front of the van, talking to the passenger side guy. But Mom noticed that even both were sitting still. The van was still slightly rocking, like there were more people inside. As my mom and I were finishing up with the sheriff, when a deputy walked in, he looked pale. He looked at my mom, the sheriff, and me. Deputy: "Sir, we were able to catch up with the van. They lost control and swerved into the ditch, actually." Sheriff: "Any of those bastards hurt?" Deputy: "No, sir, they're all fine, but we do have them in custody." The sheriff quirked an eyebrow. There were 5 men in the van. We asked them what they were doing out here and what they walked around the house like they did for. And what did they say? Deputy: "She said they were vacuum salesmen, sir. That they were a team out trying to sell their product they made." The sheriff scoffed a bit. "Well, Jones ended up checking the van and well..." Sheriff: "Well, what? Do we have a drug bust or something?" The deputy gulped and looked at my mom and me again. "No, sir, that is not what we found at all." They took my mom outside and told her what they found. She was horrified and came back in crying. After they phoned my dad, and he came rushing home. My other uncle, a mountain of a man, stayed that night just in case. Dad and Mom spent no expense on a home security system after that and taught both of us kids how to shoot and load a gun. My aunt and uncle gave us one of their German Shepherd puppies as well. Mom had trained him to be an attack dog when necessary, though you wouldn't be able to tell. When not in defense, he was a dopey, lovable pup. This still wasn't enough to settle Mom, though, and brother and I ended up going to self-defense lessons as well. My cousins were sent with us. It wasn't until a few years later that I found out what was in the van. Coincidentally, we were making cookies and other homemade candy for a Christmas party. I finally asked my mom about it. She was shocked that I asked, but knew I'd find out eventually. So, what did they find in the van? They found rope, tape, burlap sacks, and even sedatives, as well as guns and what the police described as burner phones. And they had taken all the guys back, and after hours of questioning, one of them broke and said they were having no luck in nabbing anyone in town, so they went out to the rural areas. The closest town is a very tight-knit community where everybody watches each other's backs. This terrified me. I would have never guessed. To this day, I'm very, very careful about whom I open the door for, and I can't sleep unless I have some sort of weapon in the bedside table. It's really shattered my trust in other people as well. I go out and automatically assume most people are trying to hurt me. My therapist is trying to help me with this. I sincerely hope that I never have to go through a situation like this again. This was a few years back, and I was walking home from a friend's house after hanging at hers after school. It was around 9:30 p.m. in the summer, so the sun had for the most part set. It was relatively dark, but still bright enough where I could make out the things around me. I was stoned and was walking very slowly down the road to my house, which was only about a 20-minute walk away from my friends. The majority of my walk was spent on a straight, quiet suburban street that was very familiar to me, as I had done this walk plenty of times before. After a few minutes of walking, I noticed the first and only car to drive past. It was an old beat-up white Honda, which I didn't take much notice of until another few minutes passed, and it drove past again. Still, I wasn't concerned and continued on my walk, admiring the cracks in the pavement or doing whatever else a stoned 14-year-old does on a walk. Another minute passes and this car drives past again, this time more slowly, and I feel my stomach drop. I couldn't make out who was inside, but I knew something was off. I've always been very timid, so I tried to convince myself it's just paranoia and that I was being dramatic until it drove past me once again about 2 minutes later and parked maybe 10 feet in front of me. As I approached the car, I kept my head down, but I heard a, "Hey there." And sure enough, I looked up and there was a rough-looking man who you could just tell from appearance alone smelled like stale cigarettes and body odor, sitting in the driver's seat smiling at me. The lack of teeth and dirty shirt this man had on gave me a horrible vibe, so I just gave a little smile back and continued walking. I look up and notice he's driving alongside me, and he asked me if I have directions to the closest gas station. I stopped and pointed in the general direction and told him where to go and that it was less than a 5-minute drive away when, out of nowhere, he just started to laugh. I kind of stared in confusion and fear as he squinted his eyes at me like he was trying to get a better look at my face. Then he said, "I'll take a guess, but I think I can tell from those eyes you've been smoking weed, little miss." I kind of just laughed and tried to walk away when he said, "Come back," so I stopped in my tracks. Why I didn't just keep walking is beyond me, but I turned around and he pulls out a rather large bag of weed and asks if I want some. I tell him I'm okay and I have no money, and he says something along the lines of, "I don't need your money, take it." I reassure him I'm fine and don't need it and try to continue walking. But nonetheless, he continues driving alongside me. He then asked if I needed a ride home and told me it was too dark to be walking alone, which really scared me. He continued trying to coerce me into his car, and I became more and more unsettled. I began to look for the closest house with the light on, and after finding one, I tell him, "This is my house, good night," and walk up some stranger's driveway and walk straight to their home. There was a middle-aged couple sitting in the living room, and they looked extremely shocked and equally angry, and I just started to cry out of shock and relief and apologized profusely. I explained to them what just happened, and the very kind lady assured me I did the right thing and gave me a ride home. Looking back, I probably should have knocked, but I was scared under the influence and still a child, and the homeowners were very understanding. Still one of the scariest things that has happened to me, but I am so glad that I trusted my gut and got away from that man whose intention seemed anything but pure. I still consider myself lucky that I got away. Hi. I, my sister, and my mom have been trying to make sense of this for the past couple of hours, and the facts get less comforting the more we compare our experiences of this night. So last Friday night, I, 17 male, was home alone while my family, beside my sister, 21, who was at work, stayed in their cabin a few kilometers away. I'm used to staying home alone, as this exact scenario is very common in the summertime, especially while I'm working and can't travel from the cabin and back. I'm not usually jumpy or afraid while home alone anymore. I'm used to the odd creaks and settling noises of our old house. I was especially comforted by the fact that my sister's dog was also in the house with me that night, and most noises could be attributed to him, and if anything were to happen, he would act as a guard dog of sorts and alert me to anything odd. At the time, however, he is the type of dog to bark at any noise or person walking past the doors or windows, so I'm used to hearing him bark or growl at night. Even so, this past Friday, the sound of his barks at nearly 12 a.m. was disconcerting, to say the least. Despite my comfort with staying home alone, I am still terrified of the premise of a break-in or some other uninvited human interaction at midnight. I let him bark for a few seconds, telling myself it was just someone walking past our glass door in the adjacent alleyway, and he would quiet down once they passed. Needless to say, that's not what happened. He kept barking and growling for a few moments too long, and I finally got out of bed. I sleep in the basement and walked upstairs to check it out. As I'd suspected, he was standing alert at the glass door. I was comforted for a moment until I walked over, ready to close the curtains and go back to sleep, and saw the door open about 2 or 3 inches. I froze. I'd let Bosco the dog out earlier that night, but I know I closed the door. I have never left this door open. I'm a paranoid person with bad anxiety, especially concerning break-ins and the like, so I would never, home alone, forget to close the door. I'm 100% certain. But at the time, I didn't let myself think about these facts or even acknowledge that I could not have left the door open, because I knew it would send me into a spiral, possibly an anxiety attack, if I didn't explain this away. I closed and locked the door, double checking that it was certainly locked. Using the flashlight on my phone, the lights were all off. I looked around the entire second floor of my 3-floor house, including closets and other reasonable hiding spots, just to put my mind at ease, and upon finding nothing, went back downstairs to my room. As I was down there trying to push away the fear, I could hear Bosco walking around the floor that doubles as my bedroom's roof. I thought I was overthinking it when it started to sound like human footsteps accompanied by Bosco's footsteps. He walks around for about 10 minutes before I put on my earphones and talk myself down until I can fall asleep. At 2 a.m. that same night, my sister comes home from work. I woke up a few minutes before this to Bosco in the basement, which he never does. There's even a gate to stop him from getting to the basement, whining at my bedroom door. When I got up to let him out, my sister walked in and we let him out the front door rather than the glass patio door, letting him in the same way. We talked for a while before I went back downstairs and my sister went to the bathroom. I forgot about the door, busy with work for the next few days, and forgot to mention it to anyone until tonight. My sister and mom were home with me for a movie night while my dad and brother stayed at the cabin. I remember the door situation when we were picking out horror movies to watch. I was sharing it as creepy, almost funny story, before my sister woke up, saying that the same night, an hour or so after they got home, the door was open again. The same door that was locked from the inside and not open since earlier that night. My stomach dropped and I started shaking the second this was revealed. We first started trying to explain it away. Maybe she had let Bosco out and forgotten to close it until we both recalled that we'd used the front door. Then we were trying to justify a reason somebody would break in to not steal anything and proceed to stay for 2 hours before leaving. Ultimately, I realized that I quite possibly locked somebody in the house with me, then forced them to hide upstairs while I searched the second level of our house. That appears empty with the rest of my family gone and all the lights off. It was not empty, and there was a dog who would bark if they showed themselves again, alerting me to their presence. Then, when I was in the basement and my sister was in the bathroom, they ran out the glass door, which was timed perfectly to when they found the door open once more, much wider than when I found it, as though they were only in a hurry on the way out. Perhaps they left it open the first time for a quick escape, or to stop the loud sound of it meeting the doorframe. Either way, it ties together too perfectly for me to be reasonably brushing it off. I know it's unlikely, especially if nothing missing, but in this small town, there have been many reports of break-ins with nothing missing, vandalizing or just breaking and entering many times, so it's not as unlikely as it may be in a bigger city. I can't make sense of this, and I'm shaken up thinking of the possibility of somebody being in my house while I was asleep, alone in the basement. There's a part of me that doesn't believe it, but I can't shake the too many coincidences that all tie together to make this as concerning as it is. In 2015, I moved to Florida from California to go to college. I was around 18 at the time. I was staying in a small studio by myself, pretty far from my university, but close enough to where my apartment was the hangout spot. To paint a picture of how it looked, it was in the shape of a rectangle with only one window. So you walk in and it's the living area, then the kitchen, then the bathroom, with closets on the right side of the wall. One particular night, I had about 6 friends over at my apartment. So it was 4 guys and 3 girls, including me. We were partaking in illegal activities, like drinking and getting high, but we were all under 21, so when I got a knock at the door, I thought it was a neighbor about to complain, either about the smell or the noise. I checked the peephole and saw a lady whom I instantly recognized as a panhandler. That's always at the street corner of my apartment complex, so I opened the door and asked her if I could help her with anything. She had a towel over her shoulder and said, "Hi, I've been going around door to door, but everybody keeps turning me away. I was wondering if I could please just take a shower. I promise I don't want anything else, I just want to clean up." Any sane person would have said no and told her to keep it moving, but I was a dumb 18-year-old empath that was high as balls and panicking in the moment. So I said yes, and I walked her into my bathroom, told her how to turn on the water and where the soap was, and walked out. The look of terror on my friends' faces was priceless. All at once, they started asking what I had done, and that if I realized how dangerous that situation could be. Was there somebody waiting for her outside? Did she have a gun? Was she going to rob us? One of them even went to the kitchen to grab all the knives, and then hid them just in case she tried anything. And we were all so quiet, just anxiously waiting for her to finish showering. And when she was done and came out of the bathroom, I walked her to the door. She said, "May God bless you." And I never saw her again. Not even at the corner. You could say what I did was stupid, but I know good karma will come for me one day. As the internet was coming into existence in the 90s, I was also coming into my own existence and slowly and reluctantly discovering that I was perhaps gay. The kids nowadays have it so easy they have no idea. So in 97, I was 17, had finished secondary school. It was my last summer before moving away for college, and like many closeted teens back then, I would use the internet to try and find other guys like me. So I was talking to this one dude. He was nice and all. I sent him my picture and he was suddenly in love, but then I asked for a picture. He tried sending one, but it never loaded, so he told me, "I'm super cute, I promise." And as a young and dumb 17-year-old, I believed him. I told my parents I was going to a friend's and took their car, but it was a lie. I drove almost an hour from the suburbs to the big city, found his place, parked in front, and went to knock on the door. No answer. I knocked again. Still no answer. Then I think, oh great, I'm screwed. I walked back into the parked car, take a moment thinking what to do. Do I wait or just go? As I'm doing that, movement catches my eye, and I see 2 guys walking up the street with grocery bags in the direction of the guy's place. As I see them, I keep thinking, please not him, please not him. As I think that, he looks at me. He had seen my pic, so he recognized me. He smiled and came towards my parked car. At that point, I was like, yeah, okay. So he said he was 26, but I could tell he was at least 36. But the age didn't bug me as much as his ugliness. Not even that ugly, but that creepiness to him made him ugly, if that makes sense. So I'm here in the car, and he's right outside inviting me over. I did not want to, but felt like I was not being nice to just leave. Some 20 years later, though, it doesn't feel right. Get the heck out of there, please. Plus, They came with the grocery bags, the least threatening thing, so I accepted. We went inside and the roommate asked me if I wanted to stay for dinner, and I just mumbled something. Then the creep asked if I want to visit. They live on the ground floor, and once inside you see the whole place, so there is not much to visit except for his room. Where is his room? Of course it's in the basement. So we go down the stairs and the entire basement is his room. Couldn't help but notice not how roomy it was. Walls, commercial gray, carpet, and a bed. Then he pops up his laptop and right off the bat says, "Oh, I want to show you something." Then he presses play on a Batman porn cartoon. My 17-year-old self, who didn't know much of all the things you can find on the internet, got kind of freaked out. I just stood, walked up the stairs, and left. But he came running behind me. I got in the car and locked the doors, and then he started banging on the window desperately and telling me things like, "I really like you and I want to be your friend." I drove and drove to the one friend I knew in the city and told him all of this stuff. A week or so later, I'm home with my family having dinner. We'd always eat while the 6 p.m. news was on, and what do I see there? That creepy, ugly face taking the entire TV screen. Pedophile ringmaster arrested and sentenced to 20 or more years. The guy was using the internet to draw teens to his place. Assault them in his creepy room where he had set up cameras everywhere, and he was selling the VHS tapes all around the world. I know he might be out of jail now, and in the back of my mind, that he's coming for me because I was probably one of his last encounters, and the friend I told this to, well, his dad was a journalist for a big news corporation, so I always thought that he was the one responsible for Creeper ending up on the news. I posted a story last week and mentioned a previous neighbor who was so crazy I had to move, and a few people wanted to hear the story about him, so here we go. A little background. I used to live with my good friend in an apartment complex on the sketchier side of town, and with that came the usual crazies, but nothing we couldn't handle. Almost. Except for our next door neighbor. Also, this happened about 3 months ago. The complex was smaller than a typical one. Only 2 buildings and a shitty pool. We lived on the bottom floor, and directly across from us was my neighbor's door. We'll call him Tim, with a little walkway in between that would take you to the parking lot of the complex, what he called the vestibule. It was a pretty small place, so if we both came out of our apartments at the same time, then we'd pretty much run into each other. Tim loved his vestibule. He put out flowers and constantly swept to clean it, etc. We didn't mind at all, nor paid much attention to it really, just thought he wanted to keep his apartment looking nice as it could, which is respectable. We lived in the apartment for 2.5 years and never realized how obsessed he was with the vestibule until my girlfriend and I came home from dinner one day and found a note taped to our door. It was written in Sharpie and looked like a ransom note. The note read in all caps, "No smoking in the vestibule." We pulled the note off the door, confused as it was to there when Tim's door flew open and walked right up to us. It was like he was watching the door waiting for us to come home or something, because there was no way he could have heard us unless he was right next to it. He looked like he was fuming, yet spoke in a soft, calm voice. It was definitely strange, and it put off a very creepy vibe. The conversation went something like this. "Did you get my note?" "You mean this one?" "Yeah, did you read it?" As he started to move closer. Yeah, but we don't smoke on the walkway, or in the house for that matter. We smoke over in the parking lot, so it wasn't us." He then whispers, "It's a vestibule." "I'm sorry, I didn't hear you." "It's a vestibule, and I need it clean, so stop smoking out here." He's practically screaming. With that, he does 180 and slams his door behind him. We were stunned to say the least. I've barely ever talked to this guy in the last 2 years except the simple hey when we happened to cross paths in the parking lot or on the vestibule, so it freaked us out to say the least. We went inside, chalked it up to this place is full of crazies, and forgot about it. Watched a movie, drank a little bit, and went back to bed. The next morning was a Monday, so I left in the morning for work. My roommate had already left as well, so it was just my girlfriend in the apartment. She worked afternoons, so she usually wouldn't text me till about noon, and I never really texted her first so she could sleep. But that day, she'd never texted me. 12:30 rolls around, so I text her first, thinking she must be up by now, and probably forgot or something, and that's when my heart sank. She responds to my, "Hey, good morning," with, "He's trying to break in." I quickly call her a couple of times and she's not picking up, so now I'm really freaking out. I run to my boss and let him know somebody is breaking into my house and he lets me go. I'm calling her and calling, but she won't pick up. I decide to call my roommate and let him know somebody is breaking in so he can be on his way too. I'm thinking she's been hurt or something when she finally calls me back. She was on the phone with the police. When I pick up the phone, she's hysterical, crying and incoherent. I calm her down enough to figure out what's wrong, and she says that somebody is pounding on the door and twisting the handle, and she thinks that's the neighbor. He hasn't broken in yet, but he's yelling and screaming while kicking the door over and over so loud I can hear it through the phone. He's not screaming words either, just crazy loud yelling. I'm furious and speeding to get home. I stay on the phone with my girlfriend the entire time to make sure she's okay. When I get there, I see the police walking away from my apartment. I rush up and tell them I'm the owner of the apartment and try explaining the situation. They respond saying they tried knocking on the door but nobody answered. Yeah, you dummy, why would she open the door for knocking when he was knocking too? Is what I wanted to say to him, but I just asked that you talk to him and that I wanted to press charges, and they said they would take a report and left. Didn't even come back to make sure my girlfriend was okay. I walk over and he's not there anymore. Just boot marks on my door and a note taped to my door that reads in red Sharpie this time. No smoking on the effing vestibule. The note was horrifying. Like a mental patient in an asylum wrote it. Instead of a single piece of tape to hold it up, it was taped on every single side. I rip it off and go inside to find my girlfriend hiding in the closet, sitting there bawling her eyes out. Comfort her and get her some water. My roommate comes through the door at this point and looks mad. I show him the note and we both go over to confront him. Maybe kick his ass. I don't know. It was implied, lol. As soon as we exit the house, he opens his door, meaning, once again, he was probably watching us. Did you get my note? Screw you, dude. You're not. Who the heck do you think you are trying to break into my house? What do you mean? I just put the note up. No, you're pounding on the door and jiggling the handle trying to get in. Well, I knocked, but I definitely didn't pound on your door. My girlfriend was in there and is shaken up because you were trying to break in and I could hear you through the phone screaming. This is where he froze, and I realized that he didn't think anybody was home. Just said no smoking in the vestibule and shuffled back into his apartment. Our roommate yelled, "Screw your vestibule," and kicked his door, which I found pretty funny. Our guess was that he thought he could get away with kicking and trying to break down our door, and he realized we knew it was him. Made us wonder how many times he tried to kick our door in when we weren't home. My girlfriend didn't leave the house for probably a week after that, using her vacation time because she couldn't bring herself to go outside alone and the chance he would be there. A few days later, his wife, whom I'd never seen in my life, only heard she too would have fits of rage that you could hear from outside the house, came over and explained that he was schizophrenic and has OCD, so he takes the vestibule very seriously. She then asked if she could use my oven to make brownies with a big creepy smile, instilling into my mind that these people are actually out of their minds batshit crazy. I told her absolutely not, that the two of them need to stay the heck away from anyone that comes in and out of this apartment. If he yells at even one more person, that we're going to call the police, and I slammed the door in their face. I was just so angry. I was tired of dealing with all these creeps and weirdos, and now it was affecting the lives of my loved ones, so I decided I needed a change and found a new place shortly after all of this and moved out last month. My roommate followed suit. He moved out this month, leaving behind that hellhole for good. I haven't seen him since and hope that whoever moves into that place doesn't smoke in the vestibule, because please help them if they do. My last post seemed to be appreciated, so I decided to share another story, as I have tons from living in our last home. We lived in a shady area from my birth up until I was around 20. This story is from around the time I was either 17 or 18. I was at the time a short, blonde female and had a gentle face. I was the type of person people always stopped in the subway to ask directions or for help. Now, I also grew up with a veteran father who would make us have drills at home and educated us in survival and taught us to fight and to defend ourselves. I had recently gotten a pit bull who we'll call Meatball. We lived in quite a big house, and at the time my parents had a few dogs too. We did have a routine down. My dad left for work early and I left for school/work early too. My mom worked nights and would be home with the dogs, but she would, as clockwork, walk them at 10 a.m. and she would take the car and drive to a forest or field for a few hours. This day in particular, I had finally taken the day off. I had been working every day after school and all the weekends, so I was exhausted. I decided to sleep in. I took Meatball out and then went back to bed at 9 a.m. My mom shouted to me at 10 a.m. as my room was downstairs that she was taking the dogs out, then she left. I fell back to sleep and woke up around 20 minutes later from heavy footsteps above me. Knowing I'm alone and there was no one who should be home at this time, I yell in my darkest, manliest voice possible. What the F? I know it was stupid, but I was still groggy and hadn't come to my senses yet. I hear the footsteps stop. No response. I know for sure this is somebody who is not supposed to be here now. I grab the bat I have next to my bed and put my hunting knife I have under my pillow in the back of my pants. Yes, we have more than one set of weapons by our beds. Meatball is lightly growling, tense by the feet of my bed. I get the courage somehow to yell another time. Get the heck out of here before you rip you to shreds. I give Meatball his bark command and he goes feral. We charge to the stairs and I can now hear our intruder running for his life towards the door. We run upstairs and the door swings open and he disappears out and continues to run. I slam the door shut and lock it, and I send Meatball to search every inch of our house for anybody left behind. Closets, under the bed, behind furniture. He searches. We clear out the home and I can call my mom. Did you leave the door unlocked? I ask. Yes, you were home, so she answers. I cut her off. Somebody just broke in. Meatball and I scared them off. You need to come home now, I say. Adrenaline pumping through my body now. Meatball starts barking and snarling out the door, and I feel my heartbeat start to rise as I look through our window to check if the man is still there. No sight of anybody, but I trust Meatball it's not over yet. I again, against everything I know is right, open the door and send Meatball. He runs to the gate and is barking and snarling so hard, our porch is shaking. I run after him and there he is, actually trying to steal one of our bikes. He looks up. I grab the gate, ready to let Meatball go if I need to. He drops the bike and takes off down the driveway. I run back inside and grab a leash. We run after him until he is off our property and then turn back. I would never have done this if we lived in an area with guns. They are illegal in my country and hard to come by here. The reason I followed Meatball warbound is because that dog saved my life more than I can count, and I was not letting him go into battle by himself. I know all of this was stupid, but it went so fast. We tracked this down to somebody who had been targeting our house and learning our routine. He must have missed me being home and thought it was empty. We changed our routine daily after this, but we did have a few more attempts. Nobody ever got in again though. I was tiny, but I never felt so mighty in my life. So next time you decide to break into her home, make sure the unhinged teenager and warbound pit bull aren't home. I had the weirdest interaction with a family friend today. So I'm in town visiting my family for the first time in a year. My parents' godson, 20, came over because I'm visiting and was having a conversation with my mom. He recently moved out of my parents' house. My shoes were on the chair beside him and he just lifted one up and started sniffing it mid-conversation. I immediately called him out on how creepy it was that he just started randomly sniffing my shoe. Told him to stop and that it was weird. He kept on. I told him my feet had been in there and he said something about it having that nice new leather smell like new car seats. He kept smelling. Prior to him sniffing my shoe, he practically admitted to going through my closet because he remarked how my boots looked similar to the ones in my closet. My mom then went to have a cigarette and he joined her outside before grabbing my bracelet that had been on the bed and walking away while saying, "You know, I like this," and wrapped it around his hand. I had to pry it from him because I knew I wasn't getting it back otherwise. Now, all I can think about is how he was probably sniffing the shoes in my closet without my knowledge while I had been living across the country. Update. So he doesn't have a key to the house anymore for those asking. My parents didn't really see what was wrong with the shoe incident. However, I talked about the situation with other family members who said it was definitely creepy and told my mom that she shouldn't dismiss it because my feelings were valid. I was told I was overreacting, but that it was a bizarre encounter. He lived with my parents on and off for about 2 or so years. I met him prior to the pandemic in 2019. I wasn't close with him at all and he hardly knows me. He assumes I'm financially well off and tries to take literally anything of mine that he likes, and when he came around the other day, I had been gifted a laptop for my birthday, and he asked if he could have it, and he also asked for my Netflix password. I told him if he wanted help to pay for a portion of the price every month, I'd be open to it, but he's too stingy to pay for it himself and wants to mooch. I don't know if he's expecting to be given things for free because he's too cheap to pay for them himself or what, but he seems to be very entitled to my things, or at least feel that way. To say the least, with his insistent questions about if he could have my clothes. There are items of mine that are missing. However, it's unclear if he did anything to them or if a family member moved them to storage. I'll update this later once I have time to go through the storage. Then the whole walking away thing with my bracelet and talking to himself, saying "I like this," was just super weird. It makes me question if my items are really safe in storage, but I didn't want to point any fingers until I checked the storage myself. Update / more backstory to the recent situation. There's like a laundry list of weird things that he's done in the past. He added members of my family on Facebook that I don't even talk to nor have met, might I add. Why is he adding family that doesn't even live in the area that I don't even know? My parents don't even talk to them either. He flags down my relatives in the store even though he hardly knows them and it creeps them out. He calls and texts my other relatives multiple times endlessly, then asks why they don't respond. It's like he can't take a hint. He shows up unannounced. He's so comfortable he eats week-old or who knows how old food out of the fridge when he comes around. He repeatedly asked me on multiple occasions if he could have jackets of mine during the year I've been away. When I called my mom on the phone, he said that I didn't need them or that I wouldn't be wearing them anymore anyway. He would text me off my mom's phone trying to make small talk with me, and then my mom would text me telling me he'd been the one texting. I noticed that the clothes he wanted to have had been in the same place I left them during my visit last October, so they hadn't been moved, but you have to dig in order to find them. This dude went through my things without permission and had the audacity to sniff my shoes right in front of me like I wouldn't say anything. I'm probably not going to let him in the house if he shows up again. It's super awkward to see selfies from people mentioned and notice that they also stole my makeup mirror. It's just one thing after another. This happened 15 years ago when I had just come home from college on winter break. Home this time was not the house I grew up in. My parents had just moved closer to our small city, so it just didn't feel the same to be in a different space. Maybe that's what triggered my worry. In my family, I'm always the one thinking of worst case scenarios, generally distrustful and mostly seeming like the annoying worrywart. Call it what you want, but it's the gift of fear, am I right? One cold night, my parents had gone to bed upstairs and the dog had followed suit. I thought I'd watch TV in the living room for a bit before going to sleep and settled in on the couch. The living room was in front of the house, and with the recent move, the shutters on the windows weren't there at the time, only see-through curtains that weren't really drawn. I noted this, but was used to our rural setting when the only ones who could see in were the neighbors we knew so well. I'm watching TV for about a half hour and the screen cuts out. It just goes snowy, if you will. This was back in the days when you watched whatever your local cable channels brought you. I looked up from whatever it was that I was doing. Texting? Maybe with the flip phone. At first thinking, well, that sucks, but something felt wrong. I tried the remote, but no other channels worked, and so I was sitting there thinking about what I should do instead when my cat jumps up onto the windowsill and starts wailing. That's weird. This may seem innocuous, but anybody who knew my cat knew that this was not par for the course. He was pacing and wailing at the window. A feeling of dread washed through me and I was frozen. That feeling of dread is so fiercely visceral. What the heck is going on out there? What is out there? I tried to settle myself down in this unfamiliar dark house and felt a little bit better because what are the chances? But then there it was. I swear on all I have that this cold waft of air blew through and that I heard the side door. I didn't realize that the door was there at the time. I heard a door on the side of the house and felt cold air. I became frozen. I bolted. I run upstairs to wake my parents and slumbering dog and frantically tell them somebody is trying to get in the house. They, I think, were annoyed. I'm a worrier, remember. Still, they get up and I think try to placate me by looking around the house. They go check all the rooms, including the basement, while I'm scared and exasperated. They are sleepily roaming about in the dark rooms, unarmed when who knows what has probably made it inside already. Well, they didn't find anything. They verbally patted me on the head and said goodnight and I felt foolish. That is until the next morning. I don't know what prompted my parents to call the police, but they showed up and asked me how I knew somebody was out there. Whoa, hold up. What? I started answering. Well, the cat was meowing aloud on that windowsill and my voice trailed off, waiting for the reaction I usually get, which I got. The cop smirks. A cat, huh? Okay, bro, get on with it. He goes on to say that somebody cut the cable wires in the side of the house. Either the someone or someones thought they were disarming some alarm, or they saw me sitting watching TV and wanted to mess with me. And the side door, muddy grounds gave us the ability to see the fresh tracks right up to it. It didn't look like it had been fooled with, but I know what I heard, whatever it was. I knew what I said to my parents. The triumphant feeling was short-lived when I started to mull over what I was so sure about had been true. True, I did know somebody was out there. I also knew I'd always check that side door and take some cues from the cat, just to be safe.